everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Alex and today I'm going to be bringing you the Books and Bakes book tag. Now, apologies in advance, this lighting isn't the best. It's kind of a gloomy day out here today, but you know, that's okay. We're working with what we've got. I wanted to come and bring this tag to you guys. So this tag was originally created by Life as a Page Turner and I was tagged by Reads with Rachel, so I will leave both of their videos down in the description. Now, I love the concept of this book tag. I haven't read through all the questions yet, but from what I can gather, it is just all kinds of questions based on your favorite baked goods. I love baking, and especially now that we're getting into Christmas time, it is one of my favorite traditions, so this is a perfectly timed tag. Before we get into the questions, if you are new here and you're not already, be sure to go down and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell icon so that you never miss out on any of my content. Without further ado, let's get started. So number one is cupcakes. Name a collection of short stories, poems, or anthologies where you couldn't read just one and had to go back for more. Now, to be honest, I am not a huge fan of collections. It's really hard for me to get into a short story collection because I don't feel like I can ever get really attached to the characters or the story of what's happening. So short stories and anthology collections really aren't what I gravitate towards. And poetry, I've just never really been a big fan. I've read a couple of things of poetry, but they're just not my thing. But one collection of short stories and essays that I do remember enjoying is The Opposite of Loneliness by Marina Keegan. Now, Marina Keegan was a Yale graduate, and tragically 5 days after her graduation, she was killed in a car crash, and she was a rising star. She was living in New York, going to have a play published, and she was going to really be a talent, but unfortunately she was taken too soon, and this collection just consists of some short stories and essays that her family has compiled. Now, I will say this collection has a combination of fiction and nonfiction. The fiction pieces in this were hit or miss for me. Some of them I really enjoyed and some not so much, but her essays, the nonfiction pieces, were all really well thought out and really well done. So in general, I really did enjoy this collection. I wound up giving it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Number 2 is Lemon Pound Cake. Name a book that has more than 400 pages that you consider a comfort read and a classic. And for this one, I know that not all of the books in the series are going to fit, but I'm just going to go with the Throne of Glass series in general by Sarah J. Maas. I think every single book is over 400 pages. The first one may have come in under that, but I know most of the rest of them are over 400 pages. These are the perfect comfort reads, and I do think that they are going to become YA classics, but to me, they just are comfort reads because they suck you into that world, and it's just, you can completely go to a different place, be with completely different people, and experience the really rich storyline of Throne of Glass. I don't even feel like I need to give a synopsis because everybody already knows what it's about, but this is one that I definitely think will be living on in the YA world for years and years to come, and it's definitely a comforting read to return to. Number 3 is Red Velvet Cake. Name a book that you thought was something and turned out to be something completely different. For this one, I'm going to have to go with Again But Better by Christine Riccio. Now, this novel, a lot of the synopsis that people give just on the surface talks about a college student named Shane who believes that she has done college all wrong, so she decides to go on a study abroad program to London to try to do it over. And that is part of what happens within the story. But I'm not gonna say exactly what happens because it is a spoiler if you haven't read it yet, but there is a thing that happens about halfway through the novel that completely changes the game. I'm really torn about whether or not I would have preferred to know a little bit about the plot twist beforehand, but I had absolutely no idea what was going on, and I feel like that plot twist took the entire book in a completely different direction. So I feel like, I don't know how I feel like it should have been marketed, but I don't feel like it was marketed properly because I didn't get exactly what I thought I was gonna get, which is fine, but also it kind of irked me, and I think that it did lessen my enjoyment of the novel overall. Number 4 is Chocolate Chip Cookie Dough. Name a book or series that you can read over and over again even though you know it's bad for you. And for this one, I haven't even finished the whole series yet, but I'm gonna go with The Selection by Kira Cass. Now, The Selection is a pretty classic YA series, but if you haven't heard of it before, it follows our main character, America Singer, who essentially gets picked to go on, I guess, The Bachelor, but with the prince. So the prince picks all of these girls from these different areas of the country, brings them all to the palace, and one of them is eventually going to become the princess, and this whole process is called The Selection. Now, I am not a fan of the Bachelor and Bachelorette TV shows. I really could care less, and this series series as a whole. In general, I've heard so many people say that it's a guilty pleasure read, but the first 3 books are really the only ones that matter, and the last 2 you can kind of ignore. I have only read the first book this selection, and I really enjoyed it. I definitely think it's a guilty pleasure read. It is not the most nuanced book. It's not the most complex. It's kind of a simple storyline, and one that's not completely unique. You know, we've seen these elements done quite a few times, but I really enjoyed myself while I was reading this, and I'm definitely going to be continuing the series, and this is one that I could see myself going back to over and over again. It was really quick. It was fun to read. The characters you love to hate, and just in general, I like this one. It's good. If you need a quick guilty pleasure and you haven't started it yet, I would recommend it. Number 5 is Apple Pie a la Mode. Name a book that was good, but could have been better with a little bit of ice cream. So just a book that you enjoyed, but could have had a little bit more. And for this one, I'm gonna go with Wilder Girls by Rory Power. If you haven't heard of this book, Wilder Girls follows this group of girls that are living on this island. They essentially went to this boarding school. They're secluded from everybody else because this disease called the tox has come to their island. It has killed off all of the teachers and most of the students, and now they are trying to survive. Now, I really enjoyed this book. I thought that the action was there, the characters were really well done, there's a teeny tiny side romance that I really enjoyed, and just the plot line and watching everything unfold, I really enjoyed it. But I think that this book ended way too abruptly. I would have liked at least 20 more pages of something else happening at the end, and that's the only part of this book that I was not satisfied with. I wound up giving it a 4.5 out of 5 stars instead of the full 5 because the ending just left something to be desired. So number 6 is Gingerbread Cookies, and to pick your question, it asks if you prefer your cookies crunchy or soft. Now, I prefer my cookies soft, so the question for if you prefer your cookies soft asks to name a book where it was squishy in the middle, but the beginning and the ending were really good. For this one, I'm gonna have to go with Defy Me by Tahara Mafi. Now, this is the 5th book in the Shatter Me series, so I obviously can't go into any kind of plot summary or spoilers or anything like that, but essentially, the beginning of this book was interesting. We got a big plot twist at the end of the 4th novel, so we get to be reminded of that and kind of see the initial consequences of learning this information. And then it felt like we got a whole lot of nothing all the way through the middle, and then the ending was okay. So in general, this might be a hot take, but I think that this series should have just stayed a trilogy. Even though I was not satisfied with the way that the 3rd book ended, I feel like it wrapped up really quickly and really conveniently. These other books have not really added anything much to the rest of the series. I did enjoy book 4. Book 5 was just kind of there. I really didn't care for it one way or the other, but book 6 and the final book in the series comes out next March. I am excited to see where it goes, but in general, this one, the beginning was good, the middle was meh, and the ending was okay. Number 7 is Brownies, and first it asks, are you a corner piece or a middle piece? And I am definitely a middle piece. I like my brownies gooey and fudgy, and I do like the crunch of the corner, but if I had to choose, I'd pick the middle. So if you are a middle piece person, you're supposed to pick a book that kept you in your feels the entire time. And for this one, I'm gonna have to go with The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, everyone and their mom has read this book by now, but if you haven't, it follows our main character, Evelyn Hugo, who was a big shot actress back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and since she stopped acting, she has kind of been a recluse. No one has heard from her. She's never done any interviews, and one day she calls on this relatively unknown reporter to come and do her biography. So we follow from the perspective of the reporter. She has no idea why Evelyn has selected her to write her biography, but the majority of the story is Evelyn's life story being told. Now, the big question that everybody has been asking is, who is Evelyn Hugo's one true love? Because she had 7 husbands throughout her lifetime. Everybody wants to know the history of all of these different men. So this book definitely had me in my feels the entire time. The things that Evelyn has to go through throughout her life and the different ins and outs of all her different relationships just made me so emotional. I'm not usually a book crier, but I remember listening to the audiobook of this one, and in the last hour or two, I was just crying the entire time. I just loved Evelyn's character so much, and her story impacted me so much. I'm like so many other people, this is one of my favorite books of all time. This is the first book that I read from Taylor Jenkins Reid, and it really opened me up to her. So I'm hoping to continue her backlist soon, but Evelyn is definitely one of my favorites from her. Number 8 is Birthday Cake. Name an author who you feel like keeps coming out with a book, short story, novella every year. And for this one, I'm gonna go with Christina Lauren. I feel like Christina Lauren puts out a lot of content. I mean, I think this year they put out at least 2, if not 3 books, because The Unhoneymooners came out in June, and then Twice in a Blue Moon came out, I think, in October. And they already had a pretty extensive backlist. Other than that, I can think of several of their books off the top of my head. And that's completely fine with me because I really enjoy Christina Lauren's works. I've only read 2 of their books. I read Love in Other Words and The Unhoneymooners earlier this year, but I really enjoyed them both, and a lot of their other books really interest me. Number 9 is Carrot Cake. Name a book that sounded healthy for you, but was either unhealthy for you or put you into a reading slump. For this one, I'm gonna go with a pretty recent read, and that is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. Now, the way that this book was described to me is it follows our 2 main characters, Celestial and Roy, who we see at the very beginning of the novel. They get married, and they've been married for about a year when Roy gets sent to prison for a crime that he did not commit. So he spends 5 or 6 years in prison and winds up getting out, and we get to follow Celestial and Roy throughout the novel, and we see how their marriage has been affected by Roy's time in prison. Now, that plot described like that really interested me, and the book did start out that way, but I feel like it kind of took a different turn, and it wasn't exactly what I thought that it was going to be. It was a lot more about Celestial and Roy as their own individual people, as opposed to how they were as a couple and how they were impacted by this, which I understand that and why the author made that choice, but it just wasn't what exactly I was expecting out of it, and overall it wound up kind of putting me into a reading slump because I was waiting for something to happen that didn't ever wind up happening. So I was mixed about this one. A lot of people really seemed to love it, but it just didn't hit quite right for me because I think my expectations were a little bit skewed. And number 10 says to tag some friends that you would like to share some baked goods with. Now, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head because I'm not sure who all has done this tag or been tagged in it, but if I can think of anybody, I will leave them down in the description. So that is it for the Books and Bakes book tag. Let me know your thoughts on this tag in the comments down below, or answer one of the questions for yourself. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to go down and give it a big thumbs up, as well as hitting the subscribe button and the bell icons down below so that you never miss out on any of my content. So until next time, bye!